you have to act like a man. You can't act like a teenager. You have to act like a grown person when you're doing this.
Hi, I'm Meredith Holliday. This video is about the unique challenges that teenagers face when learning how to fly an airplane. If you are the parent of a teenager who has expressed an interest in learning how to fly, or if you are a teenager who is thinking about becoming a pilot, I hope this video will help you decide whether now is really a good time for you to begin a flight training program. Dana and I have taught hundreds of people how to fly over the last 20 years. These people have ranged in age from teenagers to retirees in their 60s and 70s and have come from all walks of life. While each student has unique strengths and weaknesses that contribute to their success or failure as a pilot, teenagers have something in common in that they simply do not have as much life experience to draw upon than older students. It's not their fault, it's just a fact of life. One thing I've noticed about some of our younger flight students, even those in their early 20s, is that they have a difficult time communicating with adults in a professional manner. Some of them are shy and have a hard time making eye contact with the instructor during a lesson. Some don't know how to take good notes during a lecture because they never learned how to take good notes. They might struggle to engage in conversation and can only give yes or no answers to questions. I'm not sure if this is a side effect of the internet, social media, and smartphones, but I suspect it might have something to do with it. This sort of antisocial behavior will make it extremely difficult for a young student to complete our flight training program and earn our confidence that they are able to act as pilot in command of an airplane. I just want to say that we've had lots of students over the years who have been in their teens and early 20s, and many of them have gone on to become extremely successful pilots, flying for the airlines, aircraft owners. Many of them do a great job. But we've also had a fair number of students who have come in completely unprepared for this endeavor. And I think a lot of times the parents just don't really appreciate what's really involved in learning how to fly. And so that's why I wanted to make this video, was to really help parents decide whether or not their child is ready for this. Because in most cases, the parents are the ones paying for it. And so they really need to understand whether now is a good time for them to be investing that money or whether they should save it for perhaps sometime down the road when the child is a bit more ready to handle this. Thank you guys for joining us today. We really appreciate it. Yes. And let's just maybe do some introductions for the benefit of those who are watching. So everybody knows who I am, Meredith Holliday. Would you guys like to introduce yourselves and tell everybody a little bit about why you're here today?
Okay, I'm Stephanie Detloff. This is my son Philip. We're here initially to support Philip in his flight training, and then both of us got excited, so we are also in flight training here at Holiday.
Yeah, so this is a unique situation. In fact, I think this may be a Holiday Aviation first. This may be a Dana and Meredith first.
Okay.
We've had 3 family members all training at the same time.
Okay.
So this is really, really, really cool.
Yeah.
And not only did you all just decide to do this as a hobby, but you've taken it to the next level.
Yeah.
Because you...
Yeah, Philip started first, and I kind of stayed back because I really wasn't sure if I was interested in it. Mm-hmm. But I said, well, if he's going to be flying, I'd like at least a little bit of knowledge. So I started taking some lessons as well, and then, I really just really started to enjoy it because it's such a challenge. Mm-hmm. Flying is just so different than, learning golf lessons or, like we talked about earlier, or anything else.
Yep.
And so, but we started doing it and really liked it, and then we ended up buying a lot in an air park.
Right.
And,
like you guys are all in.
Yeah. And so we're looking for airplanes. We've got a lot in an
That's
air
awesome.
park. We want to build a home there at some point, and we've just loved it. Yesterday we went to fly in at an aerodrome that's near where we bought a lot. And
Very
just
cool.
Had a great time. So
That was really fun.
That's awesome. Very, very cool.
Yeah.
So just to give everybody a little background into your interest in this endeavor. And you started first, and then you started taking lessons, and now Stephanie is also taking lessons, and both of you have soloed,
Yes.
and
Yes.
relatively not too far apart.
He's
You were
ahead of me now. He passed me. So.
But you just got started a couple weeks ago.
Yes.
I think.
Yes.
So you're chugging through the
Yes.
pre-solo training.
Looking
And
up the mountain at the challenge.
yes.
So it's good though.
So what we're here today to talk about again is some of the unique challenges that teenagers and their parents face when learning how to fly airplanes, because this activity is very different from lots of other things that you do
Yeah.
in life, and it's certainly a very unique activity. I mean, how many, pilots end up knowing lots of pilots, so that's
Yeah.
kind of not a fair question to say, how many other pilots do you know? But it's relatively, small pool of people
Yes.
in the United States. And I just learned something in my research for this video. Only 5% of all certificated pilots are 18 or younger.
Oh, wow.
So it's a really small portion. It's
Yeah.
about the same number as that are 65 and over.
Okay.
And everybody else sort of funnels up to the middle, with the average being about 35, I think they said. And that was based on medical certificates, not pilot certificates, but obviously a correlation there.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and that kind of validated for me my suspicion, which initiated this project, in that the training materials and the approach that the FAA takes to training is not geared perhaps appropriately toward the needs of younger learners. In fact, even in the resource materials, they always reference adult learners with that phrase. And these are the needs of adult learners. And they go through the psychology for flight instructors of how do you relate to your adult learner, and, almost like you don't treat them the same as a child, obviously, because these are adults. And teenagers aren't children. Well, some of them are. But, you're kind of in that middle zone where you're still trying to figure yourself out and, and mature. So I thought to myself, this would be really interesting to talk about and find out mainly from the teen pilots what some of their challenges that they face, and also from the parents, what challenges do you face in teaching them both at home and now for you as a collective learning how to fly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let me just start with you, Philip, a couple questions. So
Okay.
since you started this whole activity, what prompted you to be a pilot? What drove your interest?
I can't remember whether or not it was my idea. I think I had said it as kind of like a joke.
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe I should get my pilot's license because I want to get all my licenses, like boater's license, motorcycle license, pilot license.
You want to be the master of all
Yeah.
vehicles.
And so then
Yes.
it kind of just started, and I really enjoyed it. So.
Uh-huh. What does risk management mean to you?
To me, I guess I think it means just what will happen if you mess up. That's what I
Okay.
think of risk management as.
That's fair.
If you're gonna do something, what could be the worst thing to happen to you? If you weren't being responsible while you're doing it. If you were flying just ignorantly, what would happen if all of a sudden something went wrong?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's to me that's what risk management is. Just staying inside that cushion of fun but safe at the same time.
Mm-hmm. So tell me a little bit about your schooling experience so far, and what grade are you in, or if you've graduated, and are you in a public school or charter school? What's been your
So I'm a
your
senior
experience?
in a public high school.
Okay.
Yeah, since 10th grade, I've tried to have as few classes at school as possible, just because I don't like school.
You do like school.
I like it, but it's a lot.
You don't prefer the 50-minute classroom
Yeah.
session followed by the next one, the next
Yeah.
one, the next
Uh-huh.
one. Yeah.
I
So
see.
I did dual enrollment at a technical school sophomore year, and then dual enrollment at a college junior year.
Awesome.
And this year I have one class at school and doing online as well.
Okay.
So just so I can do as much other stuff as possible like this. while
That's
working,
great.
So.
Can you recall a class or a subject or anything, even an extracurricular, during which the subject of risk management or the concept of it was addressed?
I mean, I guess in my technical school, we talked about it because it was auto mechanics class.
Okay.
And so you have to do everything right because if you drive the car and it's not right, it'll mess up.
Mm-hmm. Clearly.
But never really in school.
Yeah.
But I've been put in situations during high school that made me use risk management,
Uh-huh.
but never taught directly to me.
Can you give an example?
Just hanging out with your friends, being dumb,
Mm-hmm.
trying not to be too stupid and get hurt.
Mm-hmm.
What I recalled was when we started talking about doing this, Philip's young, and I mean, he's young, but he's a big, tall kid, so everybody thinks that he's older than he is, and so they assume that he's got, and he does, he's got a good head on his shoulders, but I think they think he might be more mature than he is. And so we sat down, and I just put it straight out that this is not lollygagging.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what we're doing here is very, very serious.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're going to choose to be a pilot, you have to give it 100%. This is not sleeping in and missing a class.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't, you can't make a mistake. This is, you will make a mistake,
Right.
but you got to try and make as few as possible, and you have to be very, very diligent,
Mm-hmm.
because the result of being, not having the right mindset while you're flying an airplane, can result in death. I mean, and we don't want that.
Right.
So that was, he committed to that. He said, okay, I'm 100%. I will do absolutely my best. I'm going to put my best effort in. And so that to me was, I started feeling more comfortable.
Yeah.
Then, knowing that, you have to act like a man. You can't act like a teenager.
Mm-hmm.
You have to act like a grown person when you're doing this.
Mm-hmm.
And so he committed to that. And
That's
he's,
awesome.
I've watched him fly. He's a great pilot. He's a safe pilot,
We
so.
wouldn't have let you solo if we
Yeah.
if
That's
we thought
right.
otherwise.
Yeah, he
so
soloed
kudos to
before
you.
me, right?
Really, truly.
Yeah.
Kudos to you.
And the instructors are close to his age, closer to his age than ours.
Yeah, that's why I
so
like
that's
Thad, my instructor, so much, because he's, what, like 21?
Yeah, he just turned 21
Yeah,
this year.
it's like super easy to hang out with while flying, so it's pretty nice. Not
Good.
having like a old man teach me or anything. I don't
I
know.
prefer the old man, but
But I just like the age gap, because we're like pretty similar to me. So.
Yeah.
yeah, with 3 children, there's been many times where what the activity they're going to choose could potentially hurt them, or whatever. So yeah, there's a lot of teaching moments. Philip recently in the last year wanted to get a motorcycle, ride a motorcycle.
Mm-hmm.
Joe's a skilled motorcycler, so the two of them, prepared Philly for that. How to be safe and how to manage that really dangerous piece of equipment on the road. So
Yeah, I think it started with driving.
I remember like as soon as I got my license the first day, you like stopped me before I left and were like, "You can't be an idiot." And so that was kind of it. It was just like.
Well, my dad did that. My
Yeah.
dad said, he said, you don't get any chances. There's no strikes.
Mm-hmm.
He said, one ticket and the car gets parked.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I got my first ticket and I didn't tell him. I went and told my mom, and she said, I won't say anything if you don't say anything, as long as you handle it. And so I kind of gave that speech to Philip, like, you're driving a weapon. If you don't do it properly, you're going to hurt somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we started riding motorcycles together, that's a little different approach. That's, you're the target at that point.
Mm-hmm.
When you're in a car, you're the bullet. When you're on a motorcycle, you're the target. And so we talk about, what could happen right here? We're in this guy's blind spot. What could happen?
Yeah.
Well, we're going to assume that he doesn't see us and he's going to want to turn to the left. And so what do? We're either going to back out of that blind spot or we're going to proceed through the blind spot.
Yeah.
And we're assuming that the car is going to turn left in front of us on a motorcycle. That's the biggest accident that happens in motorcycling. Is a left-turning motorist doesn't see the motorcycle because it's a smaller object on the road. And so we think about those things and are intentional and go, okay, if we see they're turning left, let's just slow up a little bit. Maybe flash your headlights and make sure that they see you, or maybe do something and make sure that that person could turn out in front of you.
And I think that's great that you've had that experience. When I was learning how to fly years ago, coincident with that, I had taken, this was up in Maryland years ago, the state police offered a motorcycle safety course. Because at the time I thought I wanted to be a driver. I never ended up soloing a motorcycle. I'm a happy passenger on Dana's, but I've never practiced it enough to be comfortable doing it on my own. But I got to tell you, that class made me a better pilot.
Yeah.
Because what they touched upon exactly what you're talking about, and it made me realize, oh my gosh, this is all what my flight instructor is telling me about looking for traffic.
Yeah.
And looking out the window and flying defensively and thinking about what is going to happen. What is that guy doing? What is that guy doing? Yeah. And today, right, this is even more pertinent to pilots because we've got ADSB and we've got people in the traffic pattern who are just staring at their iPads and not looking out the window. To me, that's tantamount to the driver who's texting and swerving in and out of the lane.
For sure.
Yeah.
Somebody who's staring at their iPad and not putting eyeballs, on the other airplane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of parallels there, and I think that's great that you've had that training.
Yeah.
do you feel like we've had enough good conversations at this point?
I feel like before I do anything, like something new, like the little boat I have, like before I went on it by myself, we talked about like you're by yourself, you have to wear your life jacket, you have to wear the safety cord that will kill the motor if you fall off, just like all that. So it's like, I think it's been pretty nice.
Because Phil, likes to do a lot of adventurous things. So I do feel like we're having conversations, with him a lot of the time, just because he's always, pushing the envelope a little bit for comfort zone for a mom at least. He's got a pretty speedy little car. He's got a motorcycle. He has a boat. So, and our girls, same thing. We just had good conversations with them about just safe operation and making good judgments, having the right friends.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask you about that. What do your friends think of you flying airplanes?
I think they all think it's like foreign, it's like weird, but cool at the same time. Like anytime I talk about it, it's like, oh, that's like so crazy, in which it is. But like, like no one can relate really. That's how I feel about it. Like, I don't really know.
I think a lot of people think that flying is easy.
Yeah.
Like, I remember before I started, I'm like, well, what's the big deal? I mean, there's this and throttle and some pedals, and I know what all that does, and I know how those control surfaces work. Big deal. And then, I mean, I remember the first lesson I had with Thad. I'm taxiing and I'm terrified. I'm like, am I really qualified to do this? I mean, you're
not running into something.
Yeah, you're not. You're like, you're not running into something. I remember, my friend Philip took lessons with Dana, a bunch of years ago, and so he's the one that recommended us come here. And so it was after my first lesson with Thad, and we'd flown and just done some basic stuff, and then we taxied back and shut it off. I remember I was shaking. I'm like, and so I called him on my way out, and I'm talking. I'm like, that is difficult. But he just said, listen. He said, Thad's in the right seat. His job is to bring you home safely. He said he is in charge of that airplane. He said his job is to be able to correct anything that you would do wrong in that airplane and bring you back home safely. So just relax, and that kind of helped. Knowing that, that he, if I'm going and I'm going to mess up something, that he's going to hop in and correct it. So and that's risk management from a teaching standpoint.
Correct.
Yeah.
Have you you said that your friends and acquaintances think what you're doing is a bit unique, to put it mildly, right? Have you perceived in your own mind any difference between how you conduct yourself and your friends or others in your age group since you started flying?
I guess like a lot of people I know, I couldn't see them flying an airplane.
Why?
Because like I don't know. If you get put in that situation where like you have to do something like right, you will do it right. Like if you're going to a fancy dinner, you wouldn't wear like shorts and a t-shirt, you'd wear like nice clothes. It's kind of like that, where like if you come to a flight school, you have to, like you said, do it right. So maybe they'd be good at it. I don't know. Like once you start, you have to be like proficient at it. I never did any driving school.
Okay.
Like I grew up riding like pit bikes, like little dirt bikes, and then four-wheelers. Then we have a side-by-side that we'd ride in together, and then dirt bikes. And then I got my truck, and that's when we like started. And it was like kind of scary being on the road first time, because like you're just not used to it. Like you're in this like big vehicle and you're like turning and there's a car like right next to you. It's just like strange.
And things are happening a lot faster.
Yeah. And so,
But we, with all of our kids, we were conscious in what the training was. Stephanie knew that I'm not the best teacher, because sometimes I'll lose my patience with things when it doesn't go, the right way. But so with the girls, she signed them up for driving school. So they got in a car and spent multiple hours getting trained, and then with all the kids, we decided that we wanted them to have their own vehicles, and so we purchased those vehicles when they were 15, so that they could do their restricted license training in the vehicle that they were going to drive on their own. And so then, Philip is in with Stephanie and I in that pickup truck,
Right.
Driving around. It's not like he was driving a Volkswagen Bug and then all of a sudden on age 16, here's the keys to a bigger truck, go out and good luck.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that's an analogy we often make with student pilots too. That's the reason why we tell folks, if you're going to start your training in the Cessna 150s, don't keep hopping back and forth randomly to the Cessna 172s when you're trying to learn how to land, because it's a lot like trying to parallel park a smart car and then getting in a big pickup truck. The sight picture is different. It's just different enough that you want to learn the process.
And
in
the
one
opposite
vehicle.
is true. If you've been flying a 172 for a long time and then you hop in a 152,
It's just different.
it's
Right.
different. You're like,
Yeah.
I don't like this. I want to be. I want to know what I'm familiar
Different
with.
performance.
Yeah.
Wow. So lots of good lessons clearly at home. You guys get the gold star. Seriously, that's
with the driving
amazing.
though, I had gone through the girls and had paid for the school to teach them all the initial 30 hours of driving. Just didn't. By the second girl, I just didn't. The value of someone else doing it wasn't there. I thought it would be, but it wasn't. I just, not to say I'm so great, but I really felt like I could do a better job.
Yeah.
Because they were traumatized a few times by the lady that they were with. Just they just were.
Wasn't as good of a teacher as you should have been.
Her criticisms and just things that people say to your children that you prefer. They that's not going to help. You know what I mean? So just a good overall safe driver. So which I think leads to us then allowing him more privileges as he goes, because he really has a good foundation of trust, because he is just makes good decisions. Has good spatial. Understands people and how they can mess up. He doesn't have any rage on the road. So yeah, gives a lot of grace to people. And so as things come up, then we were like, you want to be a pilot? That you've laid these foundational. In my mind, now I think you could achieve this.
Yeah.
Yes.
Have
if
you-
he was a bad student, a bad kid, made weird decisions, then I want to be a pilot. I would say, probably not.
So clearly you have a lot of previous experience and aptitude that maybe a lot of other people your age do not. So I think clearly you had a leg up in flight training. But given that, what for you so far have been the most challenging aspects of learning how to fly, and why?
Just the doing it, there's so much book work. It's not actually book work, but learning that I don't really want to do. I just want to fly the plane, but I do it because I know it'll help me fly better. And so it's just, that's been the hardest part. It's just coming to the lesson prepared, with your videos watched, your book read, and because if you don't do that, you're just wasting time. And so and sometimes stuff I won't really understand, and so I'll come in and then we'll talk about it, which works great because he knows
That's why
more
we're
than
here.
I do. So it's it's nice. But the flying part I really enjoyed. I haven't felt like I super struggled with anything.
I agree with you though. The books and the materials they're just not maybe a good age fit. The far name and the.
But when I started, the syllabus changed to the Sporties course. I got the first syllabus and I was like, dang, this is a lot of reading books.
Well, that was the impetus for it,
Yeah.
honestly, is because we were seeing a lot of people struggling with the FAA books. The previous video that I did, I don't know if you saw it, on who wrote the Airplane Flying Handbook and the chapter, and just the way the material is presented. For an adult learner, it's really not great. Seeing what they're being taught in school, and I don't understand how a kid is supposed to chew on this.
I think I did a lot of the learning here with Thad. Just
I agree.
because I was I would tell him I watched the video, but I don't really got a clue what it was talking about. I watch him on 2x speed because he talks so slow, and then I come here with somewhat in my mind, and then I take notes on everything Thad says, and then I go over the notes while watching the video, and it helps to have someone who will teach you, not just by yourself learning. So.
Absolutely, and that's why, when we get folks of all age groups come in and say, well, I passed the knowledge test, I guess I don't need any ground school. I said, no, this is like the SATs, right? It's just general knowledge. It's a pass-fail kind of situation, but there's so much more detail and correlation that you need to be able to apply that information when you're flying.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's important that you have those conversations with your instructor, and that's great that you were taking notes and asking those questions.
Yeah, and I think it helps to be like into it, like you like doing it, because you'll watch like other videos that aren't as like informational, but more like videos you actually will enjoy watching.
So you sought out other
Yeah.
supplemental
Yeah.
materials on your own.
And just kind of like got into it, like people flying, just thought it was cool.
Yeah, I think the teacher is, super important, obviously, and having, Thad would say, just here's someone that I really like, watch his videos.
And I thought it was helpful recently for me to understand what the end goal is for at least the training portion. The end goal is that knowledge exam, and then the practical exam with the other professional that you have to fly with, and the DPE. And so understanding that that's kind of the end goal, it's easier to study and prepare as you go, because that test at the end is very comprehensive. You can't just love to fly the plane. You have to understand it and be able to verbalize it. Open-ended questions.
Yeah. And that's another gap I found in working with lots of younger students is I can tell an adult student when I'm describing to them what to expect on the check ride or the practical test. I say, it's like a job interview. You can relate to that, right?
Yeah.
Or this is like a client meeting.
Yeah.
Right? Most adult learners can relate to that.
Yeah.
But very few teenagers can. They may have never had a job before, volunteer or otherwise.
Yeah.
So they don't really, it's not their fault. They just haven't had that life experience that they can relate to what is required when I meet with this stranger and I have to present the case that I should be given these privileges.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
I mean, maybe if you were on the debate team in high school or something, right? That's certainly applicable.
Right.
Or you've maybe had a college interview already for, teens that are on the, closer to graduation. But when you get a 16-year-old,
Yes.
they probably have never had an experience like that before.
Yes.
Yeah, where a DPE's asking you questions for an hour and a half or 2 hours in a row.
Right.
And he's probably over 50 years old, and
And you got to show that you know what you're doing.
Right.
Yeah,
and it's the same test for everybody. There's no, if you're this old, you get this test, and it's the same for everybody.
Yes. So you have to be able to use words to express your
Right.
thoughts, and yes, I can see that be a challenge for teen groups.
Yeah.
Have you ever, you've got a lot going on, but have you ever had a job or a volunteer activity or anything like that?
I work for him,
Okay.
so
Hey, he's the toughest boss you'll have, I'm sure.
I hope so.
it just like I did have one my freshman year. I was in like the ROTC program, and that was helpful because they did like practice job interviews just for
great.
fun. And so that was I think I did 2 of those, and it was like nice because it was like one-on-one and like a kind of a serious conversation with somebody that didn't actually have any consequences, and so it was nice to like learn what it was like to be in that situation, I guess. And so, and especially with like that, like when we did our pre-solo knowledge test, like it wasn't really like we weren't messing around. We were like it felt like 2 hours, but I think it was like an hour of him just like asking me questions and like kept on going.
And that's why we redesigned it to be like that.
Yeah.
It was originally just a printed sheet
Yeah.
that we'd give the students to take home, and they'd fill it out and bring it back, and we would have them hand it to us, and we would ask them the questions. But we found that a lot of times, again, across all age groups, people were just memorizing the answers, but not really able to
The why behind
the why behind it. And so when we decided to make it more like a mini check ride, when it's again more like an interview in context, we're seeing much better results.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. So I'm here with Thad Towner. Thad is one of our instructors and has a pretty unique story with us because you were a teenage student pilot at Holiday Aviation.
Yep.
So tell us a little bit about your background and how you got started in flying and what brought you here today.
Yeah. I kind of always just had an interest in flying, living by NAS Jack, seeing planes fly over all the time, always had an interest in it. And then found out that I knew a lot of people who had parents who were pilots. One of my best friends growing up, his mom was a citation captain for Wheels Up, and she saw that I had an interest in aviation, and she said, "Oh, you should do a discovery flight." And so my dad and I looked for nearby flight schools for that, and we found Holiday Aviation was one of them. Did a discovery flight. I was 15 at the time, so I really liked the idea of being a pilot, but wasn't at the time super interested in the process of becoming a pilot, all the studying and money that was going to be involved. So I just kind of did the discovery flight, and I liked it, but kind of moved on from then. And then James, one of the other instructors, he and I used to work together. So when I was 17, I overheard that he was doing flight training, and I asked him where he was doing it, and he said Holiday. And I said, well, do you enjoy it there? And he said, yeah, I love it. It's awesome.
So you were 17.
I was 17 when I started. Yep.
And you've just plowed continuously all the way through since then.
Yep.
Yep.
So,
And you got your CFI?
in April of 2024.
Right.
Yeah, and then I started flight training officially in December of 2020.
Yep.
So.
Wow. So, so Thad, as you now know, is the instructor who Philip, that you saw in the previous interview, was raving about. And if you fly with us, I hope you'll agree. But I wanted to ask Thad, given the fact that you started young and continued on through, and now you're an instructor trying to share what you know with teenagers.
Right.
You were in their shoes.
Mm.
So if you could go back in time and give your 16, 17-year-old self some advice on learning to fly,
Yeah.
what advice would you give yourself?
The biggest advice, and I didn't really figure this out until instrument training. What I figured out was studying is really, really cheap and inexpensive. You know, you have to pay for the books, but that's the cheap part. And I really didn't do a whole lot of studying in my early part of flight training. As I'll hear Dana say sometimes, you can read the book or you can pay me to read it to you. And I didn't take advantage of that. So I would say studying, get your head in the books as much as possible, is the number one thing. And then, you know, if you don't feel like studying, still get involved with aviation, watching YouTube videos of other people flying, anything you can to really keep learning. No matter what it is, really.
And when you were a student pilot, when you started, do you remember about how often were you flying, and were you busy with school or playing sports? What was your life like outside the airport at
Yeah,
that time?
I was a senior in high school at the time. I was also working. I wasn't in sports, but I was working a job on the weekends, and then I was a senior. So I was fairly busy, but definitely had more time to study than I took advantage of. So I would do probably, I think, 2 lessons a week, and probably did maybe an hour or 2 of studying the whole week, really, until I really check ride prep. I really found a passion for studying and learning more about it, and that's when I upped it a lot more after that.
Do you think the materials you were presented with at the time had anything to do with it?
I think that I had a hard time figuring out what I exactly needed to study. And, you know, you have this check ride or whatever, and there's a lot of material to know, and it's kind of hard to tackle all of it and figure out, okay, where should I start? What should I study now? What should I study tomorrow?
We live underneath the airport traffic pattern. We're in my front yard right now.
Yeah, I think it was.
So just staying organized about it.
Yeah, I would say it was the hardest thing for me.
Were there any particular subjects that you encountered during your primary training that you felt like you weren't really prepared to deal with, or were boring, or?
I remember always having a really hard time with navlogs. I remember having like 3 or 4 grounds after soloing before I could finally figure out how to make a navlog that was good enough really to start doing dual cross countries and then solo cross countries. And part of that was just a lack of note taking on those lessons. Really would show up and try to remember as much as I could, but didn't really write much down and get myself prepared to make them at home. And the big thing that I recommend is take notes. You know, when I'm writing stuff on the board or I'm explaining something, it's information I'm giving you that you're paying me to provide. Take note of it, and it's only going to help as you study on the ground or study at home, and create nav logs at home, do a weight and balance at home, rather than waiting for the next lesson and still not understanding it. Take notes. But typically the students who are first starting, all they can really think about is getting in the plane and flying, and so they're not,
That's the fun part.
yeah, they're not too keen on the studying and taking notes before we start flying.
You know, the individual has to be motivated to recognize the value
Right.
of home study.
Throughout most of my private training, I didn't have a huge passion for it. I just, again, liked the idea of one day being a pilot.
Right.
But I didn't really discover a passion for flying really until check ride prep. And then I really started to understand the material and found it genuinely interesting. And then especially found a passion for it in instrument training was when I really liked it and actually looked forward to studying. But really, I would say that it took finding that passion to really learn how to study well.
What do you think flipped that switch for you?
I think for me it was once I finally, I think it was like my third solo, I finally just realized that this was something that I really wanted to do and something that I could see progress in and see myself getting good at. It was a day when the traffic pattern was slammed, and we used to have Grumpy Bill, who was a controller here, and he was yelling at just about everyone other than me. And after my flight, he said, "You made my job a whole lot easier." And it was just kind of after that, and I really started to enjoy flying, looking forward to lessons more, looking forward to solo, and then looking forward to studying, and the thought of passing the check ride and becoming a pilot, and then moving on to the next step of instrument and commercial and so forth.
Before you found that you had that passion for flying, had you thought about anything else you wanted to do for a career?
When I was a kid, I bounced around from different thoughts of potential careers. Flying was the one that I kind of stuck with once I was like 15 or so and did the discovery flight, and then just kind of held it in the back of my mind of, yeah, I want to be a pilot. That way if someone asks me, you know, what do you want to do when you grow up? Oh, I want to be a pilot.
You've got an answer.
Yeah, I have an answer to it, but did I really want to act upon that? No, I didn't realize how much studying was going to be involved, and had I known how much studying would have been involved, I would have, you know, not looked forward to it, that's for sure. But I did have other thoughts of what could I do for a career, but flying was the one that I kind of stuck with past the age of 15.
We're glad you stuck with it.
Yeah, I am too.
Thanks, Dad.
Absolutely.
What does the phrase risk management mean to you?
Kind of figure out a way to like stay out of like a problem. I don't know.
Do you recall being taught specifically about managing risk as a driver? And what do you recall being taught?
What to do in situations like, I mean, check your rearview mirrors and like kind of look up ahead.
Do you ever think about the risk of driving before you get in the car and turn it on?
Probably the weather, definitely.
And have you ever thought about whether or not those lessons you've learned through driving would help you become a pilot? Do you see any correlation between the two?
Sometimes I haven't really thought about it, but it does go together.
All of parenting is basically teaching your children risk management, like you just said. From the time they're very little, you know, it's like, don't touch the stove, you know, don't cross the street holding my hand, or things like that. But as they get older, it becomes a bigger conversation. But phones can be a gigantic distraction.
Especially for drivers, that's clearly a huge issue
Yes.
in recent years.
Yeah, and it could be a huge issue with flying also. I mean, if you're not paying attention, if you're on your phone and you're distracted, you put everybody around you in danger and at risk. So yes, That was kind of the first thing we talked about. Interestingly enough, when we were on the Discovery flight, Caleb, I think, or I don't know who it was that taught you, but he was saying how you have to always be scanning the skies because there's people in the sky all around you at the same time as you, and you don't have rearview mirrors in an airplane, or like mirrors that are pointing them out, things that are pointing them out. So you got to be looking.
You may have seen it on the news. There was a fatal mid-air collision between two
Yes.
airplanes, including one flight school airplane. And, that's a huge risk involved in flying. When you're in an airplane, you can get lulled into thinking, oh, there's like so much sky, there's so much room, what are the odds? But then you get a bunch of people all funneling in, right?
Yeah.
To the narrow pathway doing, 100, 150, 200 miles an hour.
Yeah.
And, the reality of physics becomes very real.
Yeah, it's not good.
Well,
Yeah.
This relates to what we call in our industry, and perhaps in your world too, something called situational awareness, right?
Yeah.
Have you ever heard that term?
Yes.
Situational awareness. And very much true in driving a car and also in flying an airplane, right?
Yep.
And the reality is, if you lose situational awareness, not just of what you're doing, but keeping track of, okay, what are all those other people doing, right? Just like when you're driving and you're thinking, okay, that person over there, I see them kind of weaving in and out. I do this all the time on the highway, and 9 times out of 10, you pass them and you see they're on the phone, right? Mom knows what I'm talking about.
Yes.
You see them kind of weaving on the lane, and you'll pass them and you look over through the window if it's not tinted, and you can see they're
I pay
either
attention.
cigarette
I-
or screwing around
I
on
pay
the
attention
phone.
to that too.
Yeah.
Right.
I've seen people putting mascara on in their car too. I'm like, there's all sorts of things that people do.
I mean, who knows what?
Yeah.
But the
Yes.
same kind of nonsense can go on in the airplane, because we've got all
Yeah.
these radios and GPS, and we've got all these technology, including on our phones now. Times where we see a gap in aviation, especially, is people over reliance on technology and forgetting just the basics of situational awareness and looking out the window.
Yeah, whenever I did the driving class, the cars were like pretty old and there wasn't any backup camera or like any sensors. It's like they'd make you like turn around and look and like look in the mirror, look back and look back again before you do anything.
Yeah. Check and double check. Yeah.
Do you feel like that will help you as a pilot if you decide to, pursue flying lessons?
Yeah, I'd say it would because it's like a lot of information that wasn't only for just driving, it's pretty good life lessons.
I hope you found this video to be helpful. If you're the parent of a teenager, I'd like to leave you with 5 key things to consider before enrolling your child in a flight training program. Number 1, driving experience. Does your child hold a state-issued driver's license or learner's permit? If so, do you consider him or her to be a safe and skilled driver? Do you think your child fully understands the risks involved in operating a motor vehicle? Would you or have you let him or her solo a car? Would you allow him or her to solo an airplane at age 16? Number 2, work experience. Has your child ever completed an interview for a college or a job application? Does your child have any work experience, volunteer or paid? Do you think your child's boss would give him or her a positive recommendation? Number 3, school habits. Does your child have good study habits at school and at home? Does your child get good grades at school, particularly in math and science? Is your child responsible for maintaining his or her daily schedule independently? Number 4, social considerations. Is your child able to respectfully and intelligently interact with adults on an adult level? What about your child's friends? Are they also polite, respectful, and intelligent? Number 5, maturity. Be honest with this one. On a scale of 1 to 10, with 8 to 10 being what you would consider a fully functioning mature adult, how would you rate your child right now? Do you believe your child is mentally, physically, and emotionally mature enough to act as pilot in command of an airplane right now? If you answered yes to all 5 of these questions, then your child might be ready to learn how to fly. If you answered no to one or more of these questions, or you were unsure how to answer any of these questions, you may want to consider delaying flight training until your child gets a bit more life experience. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you here next time.
Just kind of stay in the dry area, go to the right, give him a hard bump, and then but turn him around. Okay, you can go out there, that's fine. Don't turn him loose, I don't you turn around. That's fine. Now you can go ahead and take the halter off of him. And then walk to me. Now the reason I have you do that, listen to me, look at me, is if you walk out there and just turn that horse loose, a lot of times they want to bolt off, play, kick, whatever. But if they run by you, they won't kick you, but sometimes they just want to run off and play.
Yeah.
So now you're at the safe end, and you walk away from that.
Yeah.
Okay. I do the same thing. I don't ever turn that horse loose until I'm gonna walk away from the safe end. I don't want to have to pass the dangerous end.